Hey there, YouTube neighbor. Have you ever wondered if you could learn anything from watching one episode of Mr. Rogers every day for 30 days? I have too. It is entirely too warm for this jacket, and it is especially too warm for the other jacket that I was wearing, but you have to do it for the bit. And we'll get to this box here in a minute, but today I want to share with you 3 things that I learned watching an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood every day in the month of June. And if you're old enough, why don't you let me know in the comments whether you loved to hang out on Sesame Street in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or down at the Shining Time station when you were younger. And if you're not old enough to know any of those shows, let me know what your favorite preschool, somewhat educational programming was. Leave me a comment down below. And to be completely honest, I failed at the goal to watch an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood every day in the month of June because I missed a couple days. There was a day that I thought I'd have time in the evening and then I didn't, so I went to bed. So I ended up missing 2 days. But the last 2 days of June, I made it up by doubling up on those episodes. So I did watch 30 episodes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in 30 days. And here's 3 things I learned. The first thing I learned is that Mr. Rogers had a purpose. Fred Rogers wasn't actually a fan of television. He came home from college and saw what was on TV in his parents' home and he was like, this isn't really good. So he decided that he would use TV for good and for his purpose. So from everything from his opening song, his closing song, what we learned from Picture Picture, what he was teaching in his TV house, it all worked together to teach kids a lesson. He was intentional with every aspect of the show. Now, in rewatching the show as a 41-year-old human, the times that we visited the neighborhood of make-believe weren't as exciting as I remembered. But the way that even that tied into the overall purpose of each episode was truly inspiring. Some of the parts of the show where he either used Picture Picture to show a video or went on location were fantastic. We went to a crayon factory. We visited a pretzel shop, bakery place where they made pretzels like the old-fashioned way and the new way. We learned about a weather station and he visited there. There was a guy named Wayne who worked there. Big fan of that name. And then he also went to his friend's garage where they showed him an electric car that got 50 miles of range in 1981. At the beginning of many episodes, Mr. Rogers would enter with something in his hand, a box or a bag or something else, and that would make us wonder what he had in store for us as he started the show that day. It seems that Mr. Rogers, now adults on the show called him Fred, but he's always going to be Mr. Rogers to me, was less concerned with what works on TV and more concerned with figuring out how he could use this medium to teach and communicate with children. His purpose was to let kids know that they were loved and valued, and television was just a tool that he used for that purpose. And that brings us to the second thing that I learned. Mr. Rogers cares about people. Now I'm truly amazed that I can sit on my couch eating my Frosted Flakes and watch a TV show that was filmed the year I was born all the way across the country. And when Mr. Rogers says that I'm special, he's talking to preschoolers the year I was born. And I believe him today. And 9 times out of 10, when Mr. Rogers would ask a question during his show, I would answer out loud as I'm sitting there by myself as an adult watching his show. Because you can just tell that this man truly cares about the people that he's making this programming for. Mr. Rogers didn't talk very much about his faith on his show, but his message that you are loved and valued just because you're you is the heart of the Heavenly Father. And Mr. Rogers communicated that through his words, through his songs, through the way he looked into the camera, and through his smile. I wondered throughout the month of watching Mr. Rogers every day what it would look like for someone to be the Mr. Rogers of TikTok. Instead of worrying about what value we get from the content we make or how big we can grow our platform, to sit down, to look into the camera and think, how can I help somebody feel like they are valued know that they are seen, and know that they matter. And thirdly, Mr. Rogers wasn't afraid to talk about hard topics. He did a week where he talked about divorce. He talked about anger. He sang a song in which the lyrics say, "What do you do with the mad that you feel?" Helping kids think through what they can do when they feel angry, not pretending they don't get angry. And he also had a man on his show, an African-American man, who during a time when people of color weren't allowed to swim in the same pools with their white neighbors, he had this man who on the show was Officer Clemens come in and sit down with him in a kiddie pool outside his home. And he washed Officer Clemens' feet. He wasn't afraid to tackle issues that most people probably wouldn't think kids need to think about. But the kids are going to think about it, and he was more concerned with helping kids process and think through these things that they're going to face than he was with people getting mad at him because he shouldn't be talking about that. He used his platform, his show, his neighborhood to talk about hard topics with kids and relate to them in a way that they could understand, help them process the things they were going through in their lives. It doesn't seem to me that Mr. Rogers was seeking out conflict, but he also wasn't afraid of tackling these tough issues in a way that kids could understand. Mr. Rogers wasn't a perfect person, but I think that there is a lot that we can learn from him. Whether you watch old episodes, watch the documentary, watch the film with Tom Hanks, or read a book, I'm about to listen to Exactly As You Are, The Life and Faith of Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was a good example of what it looks like to love your neighbor. And I really hope that you're inspired to love your neighbor today. Jesus in the Gospels taught that we are to love God and to love our neighbor. And then he followed that up with a story explaining who our neighbor is, and really that it's anyone in need. So who is your neighbor today? And how can you help them feel loved and valued? Thank you so much for checking out the video. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you later. Alligator. Not gonna lie, I totally forgot about this box. Like not on purpose. I was reading the script and I was doing the thing and I did the see you later and I totally forgot to show you guys what's in here. So let me do that now. This is stuff I ordered for a project I'm doing with my friend Joel. Because Joel and I are going to do a video podcast called, we're working on the name, but it's probably going to be just called Joel and Wayne Discuss the Bible podcast. It's a very clever name. So I've got bubble wrap, I've got foamy things, I've got cables, mic stands, the Zoom the Zoom PodTrack P4, and a couple of the Rode Pod mics. So podcast, Joel and Wayne Discuss the Bible podcast, coming to this YouTube channel sometime soon. Be ready for that. Pretty excited about this stuff.